If you've clicked on this video, first of all, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to watch my first ever video. My name is Travis. I've been wanting to do something on YouTube for a really long time now, and I've never really had the chance because I never had a PC or like really a good working laptop. I was just playing on Xbox, and now that I've built my own PC, I'm going to take my first attempt at it. Again, thank you for clicking on the video, and let's get started. I've been playing video games my whole life, all the way from indie games like Hollow Knight and Binding of Isaac to some really popular games like Halo Reach and Rainbow Six Siege. My tastes in games have changed a pretty large amount throughout the years, but there's one thing that has never changed in what I love about a game, and it's my love for the music. I'm a huge fan of music. I really love looking for it in everything, and I love listening and like really looking to every single piece of a song that I listen to. And so one big thing for me is when a video game soundtrack is really good and if it can actually invoke emotions in the players and also bring fascination. And it's always been something I found interesting, to the point that growing up when people would ask what my favorite bands were, I wouldn't say like Weezer, I wouldn't say Imagine Dragons or AC/DC or anything, though granted, AC/DC is a pretty awesome band. I would always say video game. And people would respond like, what kind of band is named Plants vs. Zombies? And it's something that I've heard before, and it's pretty embarrassing to explain that it's just a random game about sentient plants fighting zombies. But I could list so many video games whose songs and instrumentals I loved, and a good amount of people wouldn't know what I meant. But now, in this digital world and age, I can bring up an absolutely obscure game and someone out there would know what I was talking about. And that's what's important to me. So with that thought in mind, I came up with an idea for my first ever video. What are my top 50 favorite songs in gaming? It's a huge topic, and I know I'm going to get a lot of grief and some riots and comments if it ever gets big and blows up, but I wanted to post knowing that someone out there is going to agree with a placement of all my songs. And I spent a lot of time ranking this. It's been about 5-6 months now of ranking, recording, making this video and everything, and I've gone through a bunch of like different stuff. I've upgraded my PC, I've gotten a different mic, I've gotten a new desk, so if things change, like if some audio sounds old or maybe I sound sick in some, that's probably why. And I've ranked a large amount of these songs on personal biases and like how much I loved the games growing up or how much I would repeat the song over and over. But I'm trying to also make sure that I judge them based on how much the area and like maybe the enemy that it's about, like a boss fights theme, and how good they are. So I'm going to try to judge off those two rules, but there are going to be some songs that definitely make it up high based on preferences of what I like in my songs and my games. Alright, and with that out of the way, I hope you enjoy the video. And there will be timestamps in the video, so if you want to, I know some people would just like to search through to see if their song or their game makes it on the list. I totally say you should do that if you want. Alright, I also just want to add a little quick disclaimer. Every single title or like cover that you see in this part, these are all going to have spoilers for all these games, so make sure that you pause the video or I'll give you enough time to just check it out, just to make sure that no one gets spoiled for any games that they're interested in. Subnautica is one of those strange games for me that I have complete mixed feelings for, but one thing that I've always liked about the game was that the soundtrack would immerse you really well. Diving in the depths, having such little music in the background as you hear things like Reaper Leviathan screaming in the dark, unknown of how close they are, would really put you into that game. It was a lot different than a majority of the games that had like the ocean as the setting, so things like Raft, I never really felt like that when the shark was attacking or when I was in the water. But with Subnautica, they absolutely knocked it out of the park. And man, did the song on the menu and the loading screen prep you for everything but the absolute horror you'd feel when playing the game. It almost felt deceptive to a degree, having such an action-packed song going so fast, just to end up being thrown in the ocean with an unbelievable amount of terrors, like the deep depths with the Ghost Leviathan, to such simple enemies like the Stalkers. Definitely doesn't help I have a fear of the ocean as well, making things seem so much scarier to me. Overall, the song is pretty good, but also sounds like it's weirdly hyping up the game for the player, getting them excited to jump into the water for the first time, even though it's not as action-packed as the theme makes it seem. in Time is probably one of my favorite stylized games that I've ever played, and dude, the soundtrack is just as amazing as the style and the characters. The characters are so incredibly expressive and unique to each other, which really is pushed forward with each character tending to have their own theme. Like you have the Nyakuza DLC, where they all have their own themes, including the boss. And then you have characters like DJ Groove, and then you've also got my favorite, the Conductor, which I like to imagine this theme is theirs just because the one level that this song does play in is a level where you're running across his entire set, which is this whole train, as it's falling apart. It's just such a great area in the game, it's such a great level, and the song is really, really good pushing it forward, making it seem like you actually have to run to the other side of the train in time before it completely destroys itself. Personally, I really like the electric version of it, the Trainwreck of Electric String, not just Trainwreck theme. It's really good. It's really good. Both are really good. But I really like the electric more just because my taste in music usually tends to lean more towards electric and things like that. But it's just a perfectly encapsulating song for the level that it's in. Being 100% with you guys, I've never been a huge fan of the Kirby games. I've never had anything against them, but I've never really had much of a reason to check out the game. In fact, most of the times that I've ended up playing a Kirby game was just because it was available and I didn't really care about anything else at that time. And so I've never had any problems with the characters or soundtracks. I love King Dedede and Meta Knight and Kirby, all from the old TV show. And I love the soundtracks. That's one thing I've always found, is that when a new Kirby game comes out, I'm always ready to find out what the soundtrack sounded like, and maybe add some to Spotify playlists, things like that. I've only played 2 Kirby games in my life. It was Kirby Tetris on the Game Boy, and a little game called Kirby Superstar. It's probably one of the biggest Kirby games out there, because I know a lot of people have huge nostalgia for it. And I really loved the sprites and everything for it, the gameplay, and especially the music. It's so hard to not love the music when you have levels like Gourmet Race, where it's this little side optional level where you're racing King Dedede while collecting all of these foods, and it has such an upbeat, such a fast-paced song. It almost makes me think of Kirby every time I hear it, instantly. In the snap of a finger, I'll instantly be, oh, that's Kirby Superstar. It's always been a jingle that I've always remembered. It's always been a soundtrack that I've listened to every once in a while. Kirby Superstar isn't one of my favorite games, but it's definitely a game where I can't forget some of the songs in the soundtrack, and that's memorable to me. One of my favorite games growing up as a kid was probably Mario Kart Wii. It's one of my favorite quote-unquote party games, even though majority of the time it's going to make you want to kill your friends. But no other game in the whole series of Mario Kart has ever contended with Mario Kart Wii in my mind, and it's by a long shot. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is good, but it just doesn't hit as hard as Mario Kart Wii does to me just because nostalgia. And it has such an amazing soundtrack, the whole series, but for no reason does Coconut Mall have such an amazing theme for the fact that the whole time you're not going to be paying attention, just avoiding banana peels and green shells the whole time. I love Koopa Cape, Maple Treeway, and especially Coconut Mall. The map is amazing, seeing your random me showing up on the billboards, them driving the cars at the end of the laps, and the music absolutely matches the vibes of a mad dash throughout the mall. I've seen so many different things, like there's this one guy on YouTube who had his friends push him around to the piano while he was playing Coconut Mall. It was in the middle of a mall as well, and things like that just to me goes to show how big of a song or how good a game was when fans are willing to do stupid things like that. It's stupid, but it's amazing. You can make your fans do something like that from just a random song in a game where you have a giant turtle and a ghost and a monkey driving vehicles. It's just, to me, Coconut Mall is the absolute golden standard of what a song in Mario Kart should be, and especially what a map should be in that game series.
This is the story of a man named Stanley.
Throughout my life, I was usually just a fan of the games that would randomly take my attention or anything like that. So I'd be playing games like Mario Kart Wii, like the last one, all the way to things like Lego Batman as a kid growing up. And at some point, I don't know when it happened, I started switching to playing indie games. It was something amazing to me is that you could have such a small group of people, if not just one person, make an amazing in-depth game. And Stanley Parable is absolutely one of those games I've had a strange attachment to. It's been a game that I've always been aware of for a while now. I remember being one of the first games of its kind. It was a choose-your-own-path kind of adventure, but also not at the same time. Everything was predetermined throughout all the many endings, and it was interesting because the major thing that made it feel so unique was that there was a narrator the whole time accompanying you. It made it feel more eerie almost, while also giving you a reason to laugh every once in a while in a game which otherwise would have been boring. And if there's one thing that would have made the game flop in what it was trying to provoke in the player, is if it didn't have a soundtrack. This song is easily the most iconic song to me in all of indie games. It might not be the highest on the list, but is one of the most iconic to me, because I'm sure majority of players that play indie games know this song or have heard this song. Might not be able to put your finger on it, but you've heard it. Exploring Stanley is such a perfect song for the Stanley Parable. It really keeps the player interested, it keeps them confused and curious in what's happening. Like, who's the narrator? Why is he speaking to Stanley? Is that just Stanley's brain? Is that him thinking? Where did all Stanley's coworkers go? There's so much in this game that would flop if it wasn't absolutely propelled by the soundtrack, making it everything that it is now that I love so much. I've never really been a big fan of things like farming simulators or tycoons, things like that. I've always been more of a fan of indie games that always had my attention on an enemy or constantly pushing towards a goal. So it was incredibly strange for me when Slime Rancher grabbed my interest so bad and I was incredibly addicted to the game. I've bought it about 3 times throughout my life, and it's interesting that it's kept me like this, even though there's not really anything unbelievably unique about it each time that I bought it. The designs of the slimes are amazing, while also making a farming game require heavy thinking and almost min-maxing as much as you can to earn as much money from plorts before the day ended. And crazy to believe, this story's actually pretty good as well, with the backstory you'll find throughout all the little tomes you'll find everywhere, but it's interesting because they never required you to read them, you could just skip them. It has some great locations with crazy unique designed slimes, and no place has a better soundtrack than the ancient ruins. The music is beautiful when you get closer to the ruins. As you're entering, the music of the Indigo Plateau fades out as this beautiful chimes of the ancient ruins appear. And unironically, the first time that I ever heard that music change like that, I got so much goosebumps and shivers. It sounded amazing. It's an incredibly good use of the music. Rather than just having the songs randomly change real quick, it fades out really slowly, and then has just nothing but ambience play, and then the Ancient Ruins theme begins to play. It's an absolutely amazing way to transition to a different theme, and it always stuck to me because of that transition of hearing the chimes. It is an amazing game. I absolutely implore you guys to try playing it, even if you've never really liked games like that. You can always refund if you want to, but this could be the next game that you guys could enjoy, and I really say you guys should try. Right now, during the year 2023, we've had a lot of huge releases for video games. We've had Pizza Tower, we've had Tears of the Kingdom, we just had Mario Wonder recently as of writing and recording this. We've had a bunch of huge games come out this year, and one of those strange ones that never really had much hype for it was DREDGE. It's an amazing game where you're on this fishing boat and you're just doing your absolute best to get as much fish as you can and bring it back to the port before nighttime so you can try to upgrade your ship. I'd almost compare it to a system similar to a roguelite, where you'd go out, you'd get as much as you could, and then eventually you'd have to come back and then upgrade, and your next quote-unquote run would be better. And I've always been a huge fan of things like roguelikes and roguelites. And something that I never realized is that a little game about a fishing boat would have probably one of the best stories I've seen in a while for something so short and simple. It was such a good concept, the entire game, making a horror-based game around fishing, that when I started hearing the soundtrack, it brought me back to this almost a younger version of myself playing things like Professor Layton. One of my favorite games of all time is Professor Layton and the Curious Village. So when hearing the theme of The Cautious Traveler, it hit me so hard because it made me think so much of Professor Layton. And so of course I'm biased towards that. But the theme is really nice. I love the accordion to it. And it really makes it feel like everyone there you're speaking to is on edge, that no one really trusts each other. It's one of those songs that just made the characters feel a lot more invoking and make you think about how they feel and what's going on. Ori and the Blind Forest is another one of those really weird games for me. It's incredibly short and not very hard at all, but it has some of the best visuals and songs I've seen in a game in a while. It's really strange because it's a Metroidvania, but the combat is very much an afterthought. The map is amazing, it looks beautiful, the songs are absolutely amazing, but there's no boss fights and the combat is really lackluster. And you can tell that they used one thing to make up for the boss fights and the combat. It's the chase sequences at the end of every single major point of the game. You have moments like you're running from a volcano and a huge owl is trying to attack you at the same time. And in this case, running from a flooding cave. The music perfectly encapsulates the chase because the movement is so good in the game. The combat may be bad, but the movement is some of the best I've seen with a lot of movement capability. So as you're climbing out of this mountain, as this water is rushing up with the strength of a geyser in it, you have this really fast and beautiful music playing the whole time, and every single time you die while climbing, it doesn't restart the song at a really weird moment, it just keeps playing, and it makes it so much better. You feel heroic climbing up this mountain as all this waters are turning, purifying the whole forest and all of its dirty, toxic water. It is a perfect song for the moment that's happening, and it is incredibly well done, and it is amazing for what they had to do with the limitations of no boss fights. I haven't played Sonic in many years. Genuinely haven't played it since I had the original Sonic on the PS2. But not once have I forgotten the theme for Green Hill Zone, the first stage you encounter in almost every Sonic game. It is the perfect beginning stage for a game I've ever played, and it perfectly uses the level designs to show just how fast you can go on Sonic, while also showing you that you can't just run the entire time, still requiring you to wait or slow down to be precise and not lose all your rings. In my opinion, I would say it is easily one of the most iconic songs of all time, alongside the underground theme from Mario that had come out not long before it. This is easily one of the biggest songs in all of Sonic as well, and there's a very clear reason that Green Hill Zone has stayed a staple of the Sonic series for so long. Luigi's Mansion is probably my second favorite Mario spin-off series of all time. For it being a random game to just show off the features of the GameCube, featuring Mario's lesser-known brother at the time, it's a pretty stellar game with some incredibly fleshed-out gameplay. And for absolutely no reason did they need to make as an amazing soundtrack as they did. I'm pretty sure no one expected Luigi, the random green version of Mario, to have such a great game after his last game being Mario is Missing, an awful educational game. He was so known as being the second player to every game that no one thought much could come out of him. But then they announced Luigi's Mansion, And man, this game is perfect. It was the first just made to show off the lighting of the GameCube, but it very quickly became an incredibly loved series, and eventually got a second game on the 3DS, and a third on the Switch many years later. And there's no better moment in this game to me than walking down the main hallway and hearing this song begin to play. It is perfect to me because it just matches the vibes of the mansion, making you worry what might attack you or what might jump scare you at any moment, what might appear out of a wall to scare you. And it is even more perfect to me by the fact that Luigi will even be found humming the song sometimes. To seemingly make himself comforted and not panic. It's a perfect way to introduce Luigi into the main series as a main character, while also just creating a strange spin-off series that would end up becoming a huge cult classic. For my whole life, I knew what the Castlevania series was, but I never actually checked it out. I knew who Simon Belmont and who Richter Belmont were, and I knew Dracula and all these other characters, but never once had I really ever checked it out until probably about 3 or 4 years ago I started watching the Castlevania anime. And I know that's a lame part to start with, but it got me really into the characters and stuff, and I loved Trevor Belmont. So I started checking out the actual games, and especially the original game, because my dad loved the original game when it came out. And man, the first song, Vampire Killer, is surprisingly incredibly well done for how old of a song it is and how much limitations there were when it first came out. It's an incredibly good song that even to this point nowadays, that it's still used in almost every single Castlevania game. And not even just Castlevania games, because one of my favorite games, Dead Cells, actually has it there as well. Dead Cells, which was almost Metroidvania, but mostly just a roguelike, had a Castlevania DLC recently around the time that I started recording this. And I started playing that a lot, and one of the first tracks you hear when you enter the DLC is an amazing rendition of Vampire Killer. It really made me get even more addicted into the story and characters of the game because just the music is so amazing already, to the point that it's even in games that aren't even Castlevania. And personally, I think this is probably one of the best, oldest games on my list. Terraria is easily one of my favorite games of all time. I've bought it an unbelievable amount of times, easily over a dozen, both from just buying it for myself on the Xbox 360, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, all the way to the PC, and I've bought it so many times for all my friends as well, because it's just one of those games so accessible to play with friends and so much replayability as well. And about the end of quarantine for COVID, they'd come out with its quote-unquote final update, 1.4. And it was supposed to be one of the biggest updates, if not the biggest update for Terraria, and I was incredibly hyped for it. There was a bunch of new songs, there were so many new bosses, a bunch of new items for a bunch of the classes I like to play. And one thing that surprised me so much was that they added more weather. And one of them was the possibility of having a windy day, where you'd notice the trees swaying, and then the dandelions would gain even more life and actually start shooting dandelions at you. And man, the music is absolutely amazing for the weather for no reason. It's so dumb because it's just a random weather event that doesn't even do anything really special for you other than being able to fly a kite or being able to see dandelions become enemies. But it's such a good song for the weather and just the whole area. It's easily one of my favorite songs in the Terraria soundtrack because it just makes me think of all the fun I had with my friends when 1.4 came out. And how when I first saw all the kites you could get, I started collecting them all because they were so fun. This game means a huge amount to me, and this song is also just as important to me. And it's so fun to think back on when listening to the song and imagining all the hours that I sank into that game and wanting to do it all over again. If there was a game out there that has most affected the kind of music that I like and what kind of games I like, it would absolutely be Plants vs. Zombies. Plants vs. Zombies is an incredibly important game to me growing up. I remember waking up every morning as early as I could as a kid to sneak onto my mom's Dell computer to play some Plants vs. Zombies or some Peggle. And it's just such an important game to me, music and gameplay wise. And it's so important to me just because the character designs of every single plant and all the cool zombies, it used to scare me a lot as a kid. I used to have nightmares of the game, but I loved it so much that I just couldn't put it down and I had to keep playing it. Some of my favorite designed plants is easily like the three-peater, the torchwood, the squash. Like, all these plants are amazing designs, and something I realized is they all happen to just take place in the same level. The pool levels. The pool levels during the daytime are really enjoyed, but if I had a favorite, it would actually be the nighttime levels of the pool with the fog. I always found it so fun having to deal with the fog and all of that, and if there was like a favorite plant that I had in the entire game, it would be the planter. The game just has so many cool designed characters and such good gameplay that for no reason did they have to have as amazing music as they did, to the point that I still listen to a large majority of it even now, how many years later. Watery Graves, I think, is absolutely one of the best sounds in the entire soundtrack. It is perfect for what the level is, and when you hear it, I feel like you can almost feel the cold water as the level has. When it comes to some of the games that I've been most interested in over the years, but haven't ever really been able to stick to, it would easily be Don't Starve. Don't Starve has always had an insane grasp on me. I've always been so aware of it. And it's not that I dislike the game at all, and that's like why I don't play it. It's just I've never really had any like friend that was super into it or someone that I could help learn from. And it's really hard to try to learn on your own, so it's been really tough for me to try to start and keep playing. But when I found out that Terraria was doing a crossover with Don't Starve, I was so excited to see what they were adding. And lucky us, for us Terraria players, they added the boss, the Deerclops. And the Deerclops is probably one of the coolest designed bosses in Don't Starve as well. And his theme in Terraria, for no reason, it just has no reason to be as good as it is. Like, when it comes to Terraria, it has very unique themes for every boss, but you can definitely tell when it's a theme for a Terraria boss. But when it comes to Deerclops, you can actually tell that there's something different about it. That there's something different, that maybe it came from somewhere else, like it did. It's such a great boss design, and I'm really glad that Don't Starve was totally fine with Terraria being able to do a crossover and add it in, because it's now one of my new favorite bosses to even fight in the game for both the drops that it has and the amazing music that plays in fighting it.
Let's go practice medicine.
If there is a game out there that is the most iconic on the internet and just overall, it is easily Team Fortress 2. Team Fortress 2 has some of the most recognizable characters in any game. Like, you could ask anyone on the internet and they could probably know who the Scout or who the Heavy is or who Sniper or Spy is. But I think if there's one character that you could say people might know the most, or at least like the most, it would be Medic. Medic is an amazing character. He's so much personality in both the comics and in-game. And he has some of the coolest kits. For him being a medic in a game where he's the only support, he's surprisingly really fun to play as, even if you're just playing support, which I know a lot of games tend to struggle with. Overwatch, League of Legends. They both suck when it comes to playing support, but when you're playing a support like Medic in TF2, it really feels like you matter as a character. And if there's anything that would show how much you matter as a character, it would be his trailer when they announced him, the Meet the Medic trailer. He has an amazing theme that plays in the middle of it, and it introduces you to his character perfectly. And that theme that he has is just the epitome of everything that is medic. It is everything that you would ever want for a character like him. It sounds evil, but it also sounds triumphant. It sounds like you can't stop what's going to happen, that this guy is going to beat you. Super Mario Galaxy is easily one of my favorite video games of all time. I'm very nostalgic for it, and it means a lot to me. And it also has some of my favorite songs of all time, and just some of the coolest designs for galaxies and environments. And if there was one galaxy in there that I thought was absolutely the coolest, it would easily be Battlerock Galaxy. The entire area is super cool. The fact that it's a huge asteroid in space that has a space station inside of it for some group of unknown tyrants or pirates or just anything. It's amazing just because it's so interesting as an idea to actually have all of these enemies, have some kind of station, and the fact that you, as Mario, are breaking in and one of the stars blow up the entire space station built into the asteroid so you can try and get a power star at the end of the level. And it's also one of those levels that has the Luigi in it as well, so where you could find Luigi and rescue him for another star from him. And on top of that, it just has one of the best songs in the whole series. I'm not gonna lie, in the middle of editing this whole video, I have had the extended 30-minute long version of this song playing, and I accidentally left it on the loop and listened to it for an hour and a half without getting bored. It is a perfect song and so good. It feels like there's something at stake when you're playing the level and you really feel like you need to get something done before something horrible happens. As you might have noticed looking at the other choices that I have in my songs, and also just what I've talked about before, is that I'm a huge fan of indie games. And specifically, one of my favorites to complete was Celeste. The entire game has one of my favorite types of styles, pixel art, and that's specifically my art style as well, while also having some amazing platforming, even though I hate platforming so much. And one thing that really helped me keep going in through the games, even when it got really, really tough and I wanted to give up, was that the soundtrack would just adapt to everything you did. If you completed a certain segment or went to the next room, more would be added to the song. And it just has so many good songs, all the way from Resurrections to Quiet Falling. And one of my favorite levels is Mr. Oshiro's level at the hotel, where they have a really good theme for both, like they have Checking In, Spirit of Hospitality, Scattered and Lost. They're all great songs. But in my opinion, the best version was the B-side, which is the remix of one of the original songs in the regular level. And it is so good. Like, the Celestial Resort Good Karma mix is just too good. I also really love that they just bring in random artists to help them make these remixes, to maybe help them get more out there with such a big game now. And the remix is just amazing. I couldn't help but jam out to the whole song while playing the level. And it would really help me keep going, even though the B-side is really tough for the Celestial Resort level. Throughout my life, I have always had one huge love for the idea of VR games. To me, VR, and I still think it, is going to be the future of gaming. At some point, it's going to become something that's way more possible for everyone to have, which we're getting closer and closer to with things like the Quest. And one of my favorite games of all time, even though there's really not much to it, other than like what's on the surface level, is Boneworks. it's so underrated for what it is, and Stress Level Zero is just one of my favorite dev teams just because they've made games, like the previous game was Duck Season, and I really love Duck Season. I mean, a horror game based off of Duck Hunt is amazing. And when it came to Boneworks, I really wanted to play the game for so long after I found it, and then when I finally built my PC, it was one of the first games that I played. And man, Michael Wickoff has no idea how to make a bad song. Even in Bone Labs, the sequel that came out a while after Boneworks, there are so many good songs. He is probably my favorite artist, and if you looked at my Spotify Wrapped for the past 3 years, it would also agree to him being my favorite artist. It's such a good game, and specifically, I couldn't really pick a theme that well, like a song from the game, other than Who Am I, just because all of them are so good, and I really encourage you to try listening to any of them. They're all so good. You've got Museum, which is also another big favorite of mine. You have Who Am I from the beginning sequence, which is why I picked it. It's because it's one of the first songs you hear when you boot up the game. There's so much that you should listen to when it comes to this game, and just try the game out too if you can. If you have the ability to check it out, I would. It is worth your time no matter what. And yes, it has guns and all of that. And even if you're not a gun game type of guy, there's melee weapons. Maybe you're not even in a combat type of guy, which might make it a little hard to get into it just because there's a lot of combat. But it is a game that I absolutely implore you to play. And if you don't want to play it, at least listen to his music. Michael Wickoff is completely underrated nowadays. Straight off the bat, I'm just going to tell you guys with this one. Cuphead makes it into this list quite a bit. I think it's like 3 times. And if you've played the game and listened to the music, you can absolutely see why I put it into this list. You can't blame me at all. They have such an amazing style going back to all these old cartoons and using the specific inking styles exactly like they do, even using specific frame techniques. And it's such an amazing and beautiful game to play while also being decently hard. And I picked this specific song, Murine Corps, just because it's very obvious that it's a reference to Tom and Jerry while also being just a great song in general. It's one of the easier levels in the game, in my opinion, but it's also just incredibly fun to play, and it's just made even better by the fact that it's Tom and Jerry reference in the level that it's playing in. It's a great song, and if you somehow haven't listened to any of the songs from the Cuphead soundtrack, I very much say that you should at some point try to check it out. I am a huge fan of the Resident Evil series, and so when they announced that the Resident Evil 2 remake and Resident Evil 3 remake was a thing, I was super hyped for what was going to come to the series, especially since Resident Evil 2 is my favorite game. And so when the remake for the Resident Evil 2 came out and there was a bunch of hype for it, I was surprised that there was a lot more than what it originally had, and we had a bunch of DLCs for it, specifically about Hunk, a returning survivor, that he was getting a DLC. And he would just be murdering hordes and hordes of zombies while going through all these places we've seen before in Resident Evil 2. I was super excited, and it's really strange because this music plays like the whole time because it's a pretty short DLC. And it was super fun, and I felt that the music, with it being extreme and high-paced like it was really good at helping you keep going, and like it also made things kind of scary to go against as well, because you didn't know what was going to pop around the corner, if there was a licker there or something. And the music really did the whole situation well.
Watch, listen, and be full.
Connection terminated. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Elizabeth. If you still even remember that name.
If I had to rank what is one of the best endings I've ever seen for a game, it would easily be FNaF 6. FNaF 6 is so perfect of an ending. With, I mean, it's been a meme as well for so long. It just shows up and keeps showing up as memes. The beep, connection terminated. Like that is just so well known at this point, so that even people who don't even know it's FNaF know what it is. I've been a huge fan of the FNaF series, so that scene existing was so cool and so important to me, and it's made so much better by the fact that Nowhere to Run, the song that's playing the whole time as you have Henry explaining that he's finally putting all these demons to rest, that the game series was technically going to have it end there. And then Steel will kind of make a second game right after that about security breach and why things didn't go that way. But we don't mind that. But it was so monumental that we had a specific song made for a FNaF game just for that scene. And it's so good, and it really uplifts that ending to be something that you remember. And I love that it keeps going faster and faster and gets more like extreme, like more harrowing almost, the further and further you get into it, until it just ends with the beep at the end, cutting off instantly. It's such a good way to make an ending for a game, and having that specific song made just for it, it was perfect. I don't think you can really get better than that when it comes to a song for an ending. If there was something to prioritize in a game, or just pretty much anything in general, to make sure that the song sounded good for, the first thing that you should ever prioritize for a game to have good is either the main menu theme or the lobby. Either one of those, it could be either way. It could be like some games just have a menu, no lobby. Some games have a lobby and a main menu, or sometimes just a lobby. And when it comes to lobbies and main menu themes that have stuck out to me the most, and I remember the most, and absolutely adore, Comet Observatory is absolutely the best when it comes to lobby themes. It is superb. It is something incredibly special from the Mario series. And if there's anything that would make it stick out even more from the rest, other than the fact that it's just amazing in quality, is the fact that the more that you explore in the game, the more power stars you get, it changes and adds more to the song. It adds so much, the fact that the more progress you make, the more the song changes, just as much as how much more is available in the ship. It's huge. It makes you feel like you're seriously adding onto the song, that you're seriously making progress, because the song is making progress because of the progress you're making in the power stars. See, I say that I'm a huge fan of indie games, and I really am, but there are definitely a lot of games that you can miss because they're indie games. They're so small, they usually don't tend to have a huge fan base, but they usually have to have a super dedicated fan base. And one of the big ones for that I had heard of before, but never really checked out or seen gameplay was Katana Zero. But my friend seriously wanted to show me the game, so we hopped into a Discord call and started sharing his screen to me. And holy, it looked so fun. You were playing as some random old style samurai in a futuristic world pretty much, and it was super interesting. So I got the game and I started playing it. It was great so far. The music was pretty good. It was decent. I enjoyed a lot of it. And then we got to this one level where you're infiltrating a rave. And holy, I'm a big fan of electric and rave music. And that got me bad. It was a great song straight off the bat. And it's crazy because it's not even used past that. It is used only at the very beginning segment as you're sneaking into the back rooms of the rave concert. And it's crazy how underused it is. It's so good. I seriously think that if you guys are a fan of electric or something rave, that you should try checking out the song at some point because it's so good. The song, it's just perfect. It's everything that I want in a song that's electric, and it drops so hard. For how popular it is, I've never been a huge fan of like zombie shows or movies, just the zombie trope in general. It was really just overused and really oversaturated, like everything was zombies, and it started to get really annoying with some of the only things that were interesting to me, like in the past 10 years that were zombies, would be the Walking Dead Telltale game, not the show, and Train to Busan the movie. The main reason one of the reasons I've been afraid of it is because one day when I was asleep on the couch and my Xbox was downloading a game called Dying Light, it automatically booted it up and this song played. It was terrifying. It was a very scary music and like song to like wake up to. And so when I finally turned off the Xbox, went to bed and woke up that morning, I was really hyped for the game. It was so exciting to me because that song was stuck in my head. Like it scared the hell out of me when I first heard it because I was barely awake. And ever since the game came out and I've played it, it has consistently been my favorite zombie game to ever come out. There's other games like Left 4 Dead 2, like Dead Rising. There's a bunch of great zombie games. Like there's some really good ones, but nothing beats Dying Light to me. And it's made even better by the fact that Dying Light 2 came out like a year ago, and I really enjoyed my time with that one as well. Just Dying Light has a surprisingly good soundtrack, and this song is absolutely the start of it. This song being the first thing you hear from Dying Light really prepares you for what you're going to play in-game and what you're going to hear from music. When it comes to indie games, if there's one game that you could bring up that everyone would know, it'd be Undertale. If you don't know what Undertale was, you've been living underneath a rock your whole life. So when Deltarune, the kind of sequel, but who knows, came out for it, just kind of like maybe alternate dimension like things, alternate timeline, just that kind of stuff. When Deltarune was announced, I was super excited for it. And one of my favorite things about Undertale is how great the music is. So when I got into Deltarune, I was hearing all the music at the start. It was the basic Toby Fox stuff. I was like kind of digging it, but wasn't something I'd really listen to in my free time. And then I got into my first battle. And holy shit, it was amazing. Rude Buster is possibly one of my favorite fighting themes of all time. It is so good. And it's so good to the point that you don't mind that it's the only fighting, like pretty much one of the only fighting songs in that whole game. Like outside of the boss battles and like unique special bosses, Rude Buster is the only one you hear majority of the time. And it is so good. It is absolutely the definition of a Toby Fox game, like banger song. In my opinion, I think it's his best song he's made, with some very close, like honorable mentions, like Hopes and Dreams and things like that, Again, we're back to Cuphead, because that glorious game is probably one of the best soundtracks ever. And this time we're going to come up with our man, the Devil. His theme was just perfect for a final boss. It was super snazzy while also just having such a high pace to it that it really felt like you had the odds and like the stakes that Cuphead and Mugman were in. That if you lost the fights, you'd fail all equal aisles. It's a really, really good mix of all the instruments that they used for it, and I'm a big fan of jazz, so it helps a lot that it's something similar to that kind of jazz. There's not really much else to say about it, rather than it just being probably one of the perfect final boss themes that I've heard for a game.
All personnel, please proceed to the
Being 100% honest with you guys, I have heard a lot about the Doom series, but I never actually really checked it out until Doom Eternal was starting to come out, and all the memes about it with Animal Crossing and Doom Eternal coming out the exact same day. I never really had a huge interest in it, just because I've never been a huge fan of just games where it's like shooting, like it's just pretty much the running guns like that. But when Eternal came out, I decided, hey, I'm a little bit interested in Doom Eternal. I've got to play Doom 2016 because I know that one's important. I played that game, and holy, the BFG section was awesome. I loved getting the BFG gun, and it has probably one of my favorite themes in any game. Even if it's not the top of the list, it's such a good one. I absolutely love the whole way that you get to the gun, and that the game lets you go on a huge power trip after getting the gun, while the music is just thumping the whole time in the background. And I just love that it has multiple climaxes in the music, where it'll chill out, and then go crazy again, and then it'll chill out and go crazy again. It's such a good song, and I really enjoy listening to it every time I go back to BFG section. This is probably one of the weirdest games on this list, comparing to things like Dying Light, Doom, Katana Zero, all of that. It is very weird compared to the rest of them, but man, this game is quite the trip. When the game came out, everyone thought it was like just a cute and like peppy dating simulator or something. Then when you booted up the game, it seemed just like that with this theme playing. This peppy theme would just kick in, and during the whole game it would pretty much stay there. And then very shortly, when things would start to happen, the music would just cut out or start becoming super distorted, and then would go back to normal. It would like skip over everything that just happened as if it didn't exist, it didn't actually happen. Which would make it so much more terrifying, because then the whole theme is just playing the whole time, and you knew what just happened, but it feels like the game is trying to cover it up by changing the music back. It felt like something like the calm before the storm, and I really enjoyed that. Just, this song is really good, surprisingly, for what it does, even though it's like not my kind of music at all. And it's really good at, for some reason, having tension and also trying to relax you with you knowing that something's gonna happen. Okay, so this next game is a bit of a controversial one, just because it's a really, really big series. There's a lot of mixed emotions on them, really. It's Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Personally, I got Pokemon Violet. That was my first Pokemon game that I've played since Pokemon Platinum came out on the DS. I was really excited for it. It was a free roam Pokemon game, and I knew Arceus had just come out before, but I was more interested in it's still free roam, but I wanted to like have those specific things and like objectives, stuff like that. And Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, it was a buggy shit show on release, but it was still enjoyable. It had a lot of its enjoyable moments, and even with me being like a total Pokemon boomer, I had to get used to all these new Pokemon. It didn't feel very tough, and they actually felt like Pokemon, except for, what, his name was literally Flamigo. He was on my team the whole game. Flamigo is literally just a flamingo with the N removed from its name. But past that, the game is really enjoyable once you look past graphics and stuff like that. It's the Nintendo Switch. They're not gonna have much graphics. But one thing I wasn't expecting was that the story was not bad. The story was not bad for a Pokemon game, and the finale of the game where you fight like Alsada and stuff, dude, I thought it was great. I thought it was really good. I loved so much about that final fight, and the fact that if you were actually like on the same level or a little bit under leveled to the Pokemon, you were screwed. Like, you weren't gonna win that. And there's so much about the fight that was really enjoyable, that was just absolutely uplifted by the music. The music, it starts out using just like 2 notes the whole time. It's this light, really fast, just almost like just tone. And they constantly play it really, really fast, and then they drop it with some guitar and drums out of nowhere. It's totally unexpected for a Pokemon game. And there's so much that's so good about that end, like that final fight. Because my final fight of all time is easily Red from Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver. And I would easily put this as one of my second favorite like Pokemon fights of all time. And it's just, there's so much that is perfectly elevated in that fight by the music. The music just perfectly matches it. It really makes you feel the stakes the whole time. And I know I've said that a lot this video. That's what a lot of the music is. It helps you get into the emotions of the game, or what the game wants you to feel. And they did a great job with the theme for the final fight. I really enjoyed the music. I still listen to it today, even if my memories of Scarlet and Violet were absolutely the greatest. I didn't mean to have these two back to back, but we have another Pokemon final fight here, and it's specifically Champion Cynthia's theme. Everyone that's played Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum know the fear that they felt when entering the final fight in the Pokemon League. And especially for all the Black and White fans, they might be traumatized when they enter that one random house in Undyne Town. But Cynthia is, again, just like the last one I just brought up, is probably one of my favorite final bosses in the game. Like, it's weird calling them a final boss because it's a Pokemon game, but they really are the final fight of the game. And her theme is absolutely perfect, and it doesn't help that she starts the game, she starts that fight out with some of the scariest Pokemon. She throws out a Spiritomb first thing, which you've pretty much never seen at that point. There's so much that is so good about that fight, and the music that's playing the whole time is pretty much the only thing that makes it work. If there was any other different song or any other kind of different song playing in that moment, no one would remember Cynthia. Sure, they might remember her for being cool and having a scary team, but they wouldn't remember her like we do now. When Pokemon fans who know Cynthia and have fought Cynthia before hear her theme, hear just the first couple notes, the piano, it's there. There is fear. And they absolutely went in on that fact when they came out with Legends Arceus, and they used Cynthia's ancestor Volo and just redid her theme for his theme. And that was perfect. That was all they needed. They didn't need to make a whole new theme. They needed to remind you, this is Cynthia's lineage. This is who you're going against. And at that point, if it wasn't already obvious before, it's then obvious that you are going against Cynthia's ancestors, and you're realizing how much of how much trouble you're about to have with this fight, to the point that Volo even uses Cynthia's whole team. it's just a perfect theme in general. So I guess you could say that this theme, the original for Champion Cynthia on the DS, and then also on the Switch for Legends Arceus, is pretty much the exact same tier here.
One. And I'll be honest, killing you is hard. You know what my days used to be like? I just tested. Nobody murdered me, or put me in a potato, or fed me to birds. I had a pretty good life.
I'm a huge fan of the Portal series ever since the first game came out. I remember that when the first game came out, on the Xbox 360, I was so excited for it, but I never got to play it. I actually didn't get to play Portal 1 until about, I think it was 4 or 5 years after it came out, and that was only because I had gone to my brother's friend's house and they were playing Portal. And I'm so glad that Portal got a sequel, because Portal is now absolutely one of Valve's like main games. Like, you have Half-Life and then you have Portal. Like, we all know Valve for Half-Life and Portal now. And just Portal has some of the best characters and just surprisingly some of the best end credit songs ever. And GLaDOS is one of my favorite characters. Like, not really a villain. Villain in quotation marks. It's a little hard to not go insane or lose yourself after years and years and years and years and years of having your mind downloaded into AI and then suddenly not know who you were anymore. But I was so hyped in the second game when she is singing Once You Gone during the end credits. The whole ending of Portal 2 was just kind of perfect. The turrets singing like the opera on the way out, and then the portal and like the companion cube comes up with you to the surface, and then it ends with GLaDOS singing you the song Once You Gone. I know the lyrics like 1-to-1 now because I have it in my playlist, and I have had it in my playlist for years now. Like, honestly, I don't even know how long it's been since Portal 2 came out, but it might be a decade now that I've been listening to the song. It's just a great song, and it for no reason should a game like Portal have such a great song like that. I would check out the Portal 1 ending credit song as well. It's not as, to me, it's not my favorite compared to the second game, but it's still good. See, so this entry is a little bit of a cheat because these themes aren't actually ever really used in game. But unfortunately, one of my favorite games to play is League of Legends. Sure, the gameplay can be interesting and it's really hard to pick up, and the player and the player base is very, very interesting. But the main thing that keeps me playing the game is the characters and the stories. I really love the stories and characters. Like, some of my favorite characters are Teemo, Nunu and Willem, Kha'Zix. Like, I just love to know as much as I can about the story of all these characters. And one thing that Riot Games has always done really good is making the themes for the characters. Again, they're not used in games, so it's kind of a cheat that I put this up this high. But specifically, one of my favorite themes is for a character named Jhin the Virtuoso. He is absolutely one of my favorite design characters of all time. I barely play him in the game, but he is perfectly designed to me with some of the best story I've ever seen for a character, and I'm so excited to learn more about him. And his big theme is the number 4, which is also the number of death in Japanese culture and things like that, if you want to pull that similarity. He's pretty much an insane quote-unquote artist who plays things like the violin, and he holds a gun that shoots 4 bullets. And the 4th bullet is always supposed to be the final and strongest one. And it's supposed to disfigure the victims into things like beautiful trees, flowers, lotuses. there's so much about the character that is so good, and when it comes to the song, he's perfectly matched with the fact that his song is a very large amount opera / choir with a mix of orchestra, and also my favorite thing in this song being these thumps you'll hear in the background. It'll be like boom boom. That's him shooting and reloading his gun. It is perfect to me. It is a great inclusion of being able to know, like, this is Jhin's theme. This is him. And I can only imagine this is the song that's playing in his head when he's killing people. He's a very well designed character, and the end of the song is so good. It is such an amazing climax with the violin. I absolutely love it, and the choir matches that violin so well. It is a really good song, and I really think that if you guys haven't heard it, they should go out there and listen to the whole song, and it's so good. Just try listening to Riot Games music, in fact. Like, they have a lot of great themes for League of Legends, and then for their songs for like Valorant and like League of Legends tournaments, they have some really good ones too, along with a kind of well-known like group, KDA being their group that they made, and they're coming out with a new one, Heartsteel, which is a boy band. You just listen to their music. They know what they're doing when it comes to their music. If there's one song that I can confidently say on this list that everyone has heard of at least once in their life if they're a fan of video games, it's probably Last Surprise from Persona 5. See, I never actually got to play this game until a couple years ago, probably like 2 years ago, 3 years ago almost. And it was my first game in the Persona series, and it caused me to check out the fourth game and the third game. I'm sorry, I don't care about the first two. But the soundtrack for the Persona games are amazing, and I think I can say that Last Surprise is the absolute pinnacle of it, with some of the other songs being just barely below it, like Specialist from Persona 4. It was super hard for me to pick between Specialist and Last Surprise, because I really love Specialist too, but eventually I just chose this song because the lyrics are so good, whereas Specialist is just music, it's not lyrics at all in it. And just listening to the lyrics for Last Surprise, it's surprisingly motivational as well. Just everything about the Persona soundtrack with the visuals that they give you is really what heightens the experience of each song. It's a little, you can definitely enjoy them outside the game, but when you're experiencing them in the game, it makes a world's difference.
Grabbing a butcher's knife from the kitchen. Isaac, watching through a crack in his door, trembled in fear. Scrambling around his room to find a hiding place, he noticed a trapdoor to the basement, hidden under his rug. Without hesitation, he flung open the hatch, just as his mother burst through his door and threw himself down into the unknown depths below.
If I had to say I had a favorite genre, it would be roguelikes, easily. And if just outside of the roguelike genre, I can easily say Binding of Isaac is my favorite video game of all time. It is incredibly important to me. It absolutely helped me survive quarantine when it was going on. And I've been a huge fan of it since. And I have the entire card set, including the big box that it comes in. I have every figure. I have some plushies, like Fruity Plum's one of my favorite. That game means a huge amount to me. And Edmund McMillan's, I have been playing his games almost my entire life, starting with Super Meat Boy. I remember the afternoon that Super Meat Boy first showed up on the Xbox game arcade shop. Edmund McMillan is a huge person to me, and it's gotten to the point I actually like constantly talk to him on Twitter, and it got to the point that we've had multiple conversations, and he's helped me start working on the things that I really enjoy, the things that I want to pursue, like this. And he's even given me a graduation. When I graduated high school, my family somehow got him to give a video, like send a video to me. And it's just very important to me. And the community for Binding of Isaac is probably the best I've ever seen. They are so kind, and they are so nice to people, and they make so much content on their own. And one of them is the song Innocent Glitch from the Afterbirth mod, which eventually became kind of a part of the actual game, because they added a bunch of his stuff in for the Repentance DLC. But it is just amazing. I love the song. And there's this one specific animation, I'm blanking on the artist, but I'm gonna try to hopefully editor me will put it in the corner of the video or something to make sure you guys can check it out, because it's amazing animation. And there's so much about Isaac I love. And even if this song isn't the absolute best on this list and it's not going to top everything else, it means a lot to me, everything about this game. And now, on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, going from indie game to AAA game company, we have Super Mario Galaxy. There is so much that is perfect about Super Mario Galaxy to me. I was born in 2005, so I grew up with a lot of the Wii and Xbox 360. And one of the games that's always stayed in my top 10, even as the years have gone by, and absolutely my favorite soundtrack of all time, is absolutely Super Mario Galaxy. It was incredibly hard to pick just one song from this game for specifically this high up in the list, and I eventually chose Bowser's Final Theme because I absolutely love the choir that they have for it, and I also love the little tones of electric in it with the bam bum 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 bum, you know? And it is such a good song, and I really enjoyed the final fight of the game because it's like jumping between planets in the center of a new galaxy being created is possibly one of the coolest settings I've seen for a final boss fight. And I would like to give an honorable mention to Freeze Flame Galaxy as well, because it has multiple different themes for it, because you can either go to the freeze part or the flame part of the galaxy, because that easily takes one of my second favorite themes in the game. Minecraft is a really weird game for me. I seriously enjoy it, but every time that I play the game, I'll play for 2 weeks to a month straight, and then drop the game for half a year. And I've been playing it since it came out on the Xbox 360. And it's really interesting because that process has never really stopped. It's been going on my whole life. And I love Lena Raine's new soundtrack for the game since the Cave update, because I just love Lena Raine in general. She made the soundtrack for Celeste, and then also this painting game. And she does an amazing job, but for me, nothing can beat the amazing soundtrack done by C418. He did an amazing job in the soundtrack, especially since he was the first soundtrack for it, and they just kind of threw out some things hoping it would stick. And there's one specific song to me that's especially spectacular, and it's Area Math. Minecraft has always hit really different for me, especially when I was playing the old Xbox 360 tutorial, and when that song would play in the background, it was it felt huge to me. It felt strange. I felt like I was actually exploring a new place I've never been to, and the song is so good. I've been listening to it ever since the game came out. I really, really wish that there was an option to switch out at least some of Lena Raine's soundtrack for the original C418 soundtrack, because I love her, but I would do that in a heartbeat because I grew up with C418's soundtrack. Hollow Knight is a really weird concept for a game. I love to just think of these silly little bugs in their silly little towns underneath the ground, and then remember that the story is unbelievably depressing and sad. But it's great gameplay. I would say Hollow Knight is easily one of my favorite 100% completion experiences for a game. It's just an amazing world that Team Cherry created, of just all these bugs in a desolate world ravaged by some sickness that steals from the people's souls, their minds, makes them pretty much lose themselves. And man, the environments are perfect, and the music is perfect for those environments. It was really hard to pick from this game. And a specific song that I could never forget because I love the fight so much, even when it's not the absolute hardest, is the Mantis Lords. The Mantis Lords, it's so fast-paced and it makes you panic because there's three mantises fighting you, and if you're going for the God Home DLC version, you have 3 at once rather than 1 and then 2 at once. It's 1 and then 3 at once. It's a really good song. It's so fast-paced and makes you panic, and it really makes you start to throw the fight. It feels like the song isn't like sad, isn't evil. It's just about surviving what's right in front of you, and that's what makes the Mantis Lord boss fight. It doesn't really feel like they're an actual enemy. You're challenging them. This song is really perfect for the fight. I really enjoy the instruments that they use because it really makes me actually think of a mantis, like a mantis's escape or a mantis's movement almost. And it was really hard to pick from Hollow Knight. There's so many amazing songs like Green Path, you have Queen's Gardens, you have The Lost Kin, Mantis Lords, Radiance. There's a lot. So I'm just saying, check out the soundtrack if you want, and even better, check out the game. It's usually on deal and is almost like really, really cheap. And it has 4 free DLCs with a lot of content with it. So I would absolutely try checking out the game, or at least the soundtrack if you can. So I know we've already had a lot of entries for Cuphead, but I can't help it. I've been a huge fan of Cuphead since it came out. In fact, to play the game when it came out on Xbox One, I absolutely begged my mom to get it for me because I was still young. I didn't really have a job yet. I had bought a limited edition watch that I still have. I have pins, buttons. I have a lot of merch for it, even though I'm not even like that huge into it. It's still a memory I really enjoy. And recently, I returned to the game 200% completed again. And since then, the DLC had come out that I'd been waiting for. And dude, it was amazing, and the music was just as good. It was just as good. And this boss fight specifically to me, for Hidden Hoopla, was so good to me. I hate the plane fights in Cuphead, but that specific boss made me have so much fun while playing it. It was crazy to me. It was absolutely just because the music matched the design of the level, and especially the boss, with some really amazing vocals and instrument usage. It's made even better by the fact that I'm not even a huge fan of anything country or anything like that, because I grew up near the country and there was a lot of country music wherever I go. The boss is just excellently made, with the music matching everything perfectly, and with Esther Winchester, that's the boss's names, being a very, very clearly a reference to some of my favorite Disney characters like Horse Collar. I couldn't have asked for anything better for a boss. Being 100% honest, when it came to the Risk of Rain series, I actually played Risk of Rain 2, and then Risk of Rain Returns came out ever since I started this script, and started recording everything. So I never actually played the original until I played the remake of it. Well, kind of a remaster more than a remake. And it is a great game. And the music is so good that even when I was playing Risk of Rain 2 before Returns had come out and I 100% completed that, I would still listen to the soundtrack for the first game because it was so good. When Returns came out, I was floored by the art style because I absolutely love I love pixel art. And just the essence of the game was so good, and it was just really weird but strangely easy to get used to the fact the game was 2D from coming from Risk of Rain 2. And man, if there was something that elevated the game's gameplay to be just 10 times better than it already was, it was absolutely Chris Christodoulou. And this song, in my opinion, is the absolute epitome of the soundtrack for Returns and the original. It's such a perfect song for everything that the game is. The look, the environment, the characters, the gameplay, it fits it all. It's just the magic that Chris can do with his music is something that I seriously love. And also, I apologize if I pronounced his name incorrectly. Really bad pronunciation. And following up right behind Coalescence is his other song, The Rain Formerly Known as Purple, from Risk of Rain 2. I know we had just talked about Chris, but here he is again with another banger. This song is absolutely my favorite in the soundtrack. It sounds amazing, and Chris's iconic electric guitar in the song absolutely kicks ass. But also just the area the song plays in is one of my favorite environments for a game. It's some desolate floating rock on a planet, and it's weird because it's not just a completely rock floating in space. It's still on a planet, it's just isolated. And it's such an awesome environment with amazing lighting and some beautiful visuals, and that it has everything that I just talked about with the previous song. It's just perfect for the environment, and it fits no matter what character you're playing or what playstyle you have. It's just everything you would want for a song about survivors in a distant, unknown planet, with no way but to go forward. It is a great song, and I know I'm probably going to talk a little bit less about this one, but it's just as good as Coalescence. Honestly, you could flip-flop Coalescence and The Rain Formerly Known as Purple if you wanted. They're both just as good as each other. When it comes to every video game that I've ever played, I would have to say that the hardest quote-unquote final boss I've ever fought, because it can't really be counted as a final boss because it's more so just an extra thing you can do at the end of the game, and he just so happens to be the final boss, is the battle with Red from Gold/Heart Gold, specifically Heart Gold for me in this one. He is an unbelievably tough fight because the way that you even get to him is by going through the first 8 gyms in the Kanto region, then going to the Johto region and doing all 8 gyms there as well. Finally making it to Mount Silver and climbing to the very top just to see Red just sitting at the top. You talk to him, he doesn't speak, he doesn't do anything. He just stands there and goes ... as his text chat, and he just challenges you. And this theme starts to play, and it's so ominous at the start, and it just keeps going on and on. It is a perfect, really eerie theme, and it's then made so much more terrifying by him throwing out his first Pokemon, a level 88 Pikachu. It is insane having a trainer in that game, in any Pokemon game, have anything above level 80. So him having Pokemon pushed level 90 was terrifying. And I remember going to that that battle for the first time as a kid with like level 60 Pokemon that I'd barely gotten past all 16 gyms in the game. The theme is like so good because it's just the way that it starts with that eerie music. It's not even music, it's a beat. It's a beat as you just see the icy wind blow past Red as he tips his hat, pulling it down, like shrouding his eyes so you can't see his face. It's terrifying. It's a literally chilling way for a battle to start. And then when the song really starts to play and pick up, it's so hard for a song to be terrifying in a Pokemon game and also something that like keeps you going. Because that song is so hard to not just like bang your head to. Like, it's so freaking good. But it's also terrifying because it really helps you settle in and realize, wow, I'm fighting the champion of Pokemon. This is the strongest trainer in all of Pokemon. So even if your whole team gets demolished, it feels crazy. It feels super important that you got there and that you're even battling him. It is one of the perfect boss fights in all of the games I've ever played, and I would say it is the best final boss I've ever fought in the game.
No.
So this is going to be the most recent game on this list, because as of writing this script, I am currently falling in love with Pikmin, and I'm incredibly biased now because I've fallen in love with Pikmin 4, which is my first ever Pikmin game. I've known about the game series for a super long time, and I've known that the games have been amazing, and they have some pretty good boss fights. And it's not even like, and even if the boss fight isn't like great, that are always accompanied by great music like Water Wraith and such like that. But when it comes to Pikmin, so far I would absolutely say I prefer the Sire Hound's theme for what it does that hasn't been done in the entire Pikmin series. It used heavy metal. I grew up listening to heavy metal all the time because my dad was a huge fan. So when this Pikmin game for the first time came out, and I started playing, and the whole music up to then has been like chill, little like some like fast-paced songs that most of it has just been chill, little like music for like the overworld where you're collecting like all the gems and stuff to build like bridges and stuff like that and finding Boldman. There's not a lot going on, it's just little calm music. But when I fought the final boss, I was not prepared for the deceivingly scary, anxiety-inducing thing. It was something I was so shocked by that they had used heavy metal in this game that the entire time it hadn't once gone to that level. Like, the closest you could get was probably the little DJ spider guy in that one cave where it's like dressed as a disco ball and stuff. But even then, that's like electric / rave, stuff like that. So that was like, it fit the character, like it fit the enemy that we were fighting. And this one was just shocking out of nowhere because it's just heavy metal, like constant guitar and it's just all of that. It was a great fight. It wasn't a hard fight, like it wasn't a super hard fight. I had some moments where I struggled versus like specifically the poison segment of the fight. But I know that a lot of people struggle with the lightning part of the fight, which I was a little OP versus because I went in with like 80 yellow Pikmin. But for the fact that it's not the toughest Pikmin fight, it has some of the biggest meaning it feels in the history of Pikmin for like the music and stuff. Because I've seen all of these gameplay of all these other boss fights for Pikmin from all the games that I haven't played yet. I'm starting to play Pikmin 1 and 2 right now. And they don't ever really move outside of their comfort zone of oh, this is the kind of music that we've been using, let's keep using it. And this was like one of the first main big times that I've seen it happen. It's great that they weren't afraid to use like the guitar and drums in the song with the mix of like other instruments and sounds. And the fight even starts with like the goofy ass opening as Louie runs up to the Psyhound and jumps on top. And it absolutely drops into what is now easily one of my favorite video game songs of all time, making the song a near 10 out of 10 for me for a boss fight that's not even that amazing. Throughout my life, I've always known about the Final Fantasy games, but I never actually really checked any of them out, mainly just because I didn't think I could play any of them because I didn't have any Nintendo consoles. I grew up with a Game Boy, Xbox 360, and then eventually got the Xbox One until now where I built my PC. And I finally have gotten my first chance to play a Final Fantasy game, and so I picked the remake of the 7th, just because I know who Cloud is, and Cloud is like one of the most well-known main characters for a game, and I also know Sephiroth. And I've always listened to the music from the Final Fantasy series because I've always known it's good, but I never got to seriously experience it before until playing the remake of the 7th one, and One Winged Angel started playing again at the end of the game. It was so good. When the remake came out, it was so hyped, and I was seriously debating getting it or not. So when I did get it, holy, this was a masterpiece of a remix of One Winged Angel. I feel like almost playing the entire game was worth it just to make sure that I got to that song at the very end. It's just perfect for the theme that Sephiroth has. It's someone who's better, he's someone who's stronger, someone who's just smarter than everyone else. And I know that, like, I haven't watched the movie, but I know that the movie Advent Children has a bunch of references in the song, which I think is perfect since, you know, Sephiroth is a huge part of the movie and Sephiroth is a huge part of the game. Just overall, the song was just perfect for the situation it was in, and the remix of it was super welcomed, and it made the ending fight just way more memorable for all the fans of this series, and also just for all the people like me who were just getting introduced to this series for the first time. When it comes to shooter games, there are two main ones that I first played. It was Halo Reach and Black Ops 1. I don't remember which one I played first because those are like some of the first ever games I played. But Halo Reach was one of the first games of like all time that I actually seriously cherish. In fact, I bought the whole Master Chief collection recently when it was on deal just so I could replay all of Halo Reach. And I know that when it comes to Halo, all people think of is just the amazing, like, opera-esque menu screen of the original. But I just can't stop thinking of specifically Tip the Spear. It's the huge quote-unquote turning point in the war to save the planet Reach. It's an amazing scene where all these warthogs and aircrafts are flying across the battlefield as this music starts to kick in, giving overhead shots to show the absolute mass of the UNSC army. Cat and Noble 6 and the exact same Warthog getting ready with a detonator, one button press away from more when boom, banshees, ghosts, huge tanks appear, laying fire instantly. The music kicking in so hard as the battlefield truly becomes what the name means. Bodies flying, cars exploding, banshees getting shot down, everything just going to hell on both sides of the war. And when the big climax of that scene is you and Cat jumping a bridge, crashing and being stranded on the wrong side of the war with nothing but your guns and armor, as the last thing you see before being thrown into the fight being other UNSC soldiers failing the bridge jump and falling to the deaths, setting the vibe for the rest of the level. And this song is playing that whole time. It is an amazing song. It's covering one of my favorite scenes I've ever seen in a video game, just one of the best cutscenes, and probably my favorite war scene in a game ever. Everything about this song is just perfect for the situation. And I just think it'd be really hard to find someone who can disagree with me in saying that Tip of the Spear is just perfect for this scene in almost every way it could ever be. When I made this list, I instantly knew that Undertale was going to be somewhere on it. I knew that it was going to be a top 10 at least, which is crazy that a game can have that good of music that you can instantly tell that it's going to place that high on a list this big. So when I replayed the game for this list, I knew there was going to be between Asgore or Undyne. And honestly, at some point, I just couldn't decide because both their songs are perfect for the situation. They have amazing meaning and motivation behind both those characters. So I just decided that for the first and the last time on this list, and probably in the future as well, that I have two songs in one spot. Both these songs have some amazing meaning behind, so I'm going to talk about them as if they both had their own placement on the list, and as if they're not sharing the exact same spot, just because they deserve that treatment to be talked about so people can understand why they're so important and why there's two here. No matter what kind of run you have in Undertale, whether it's the pacifist or the genocide or just the neutral run where you kill some, spare some, at some point at the end of the game you're going to run to Asgore. And he is the perfect encounter for a boss fight, in my opinion. It's just when there is a boss fight where the actual boss is so kind and caring that when you have to fight them, you couldn't ever actually want to hurt them, that is the perfect way to make a character care about your game. So when Asgore and you meet in his room, and he offers you food and a drink, when he knows what you're there for, I mean, he knows that you're there to either kill him or just pass. And at the end, he knows that it's probably going to lead to him dying. It's so major that when he takes you to that final area where the fight takes place, the barrier between the human realm and the underground, he turns around, showing you all the souls he's collected, showing you that he needs only one more. And it's right in front of him. It's you. He challenges you, apologizing for what he has to do, and immediately destroys the mercy bar, forcing you, the player, to fight him, knowing that the only way he could really get you to fight him was to remove the option of sparing entirely. And something I noticed when replaying the game is that the entire time that you're fighting him, his name is always in yellow, which if you don't know Undertale well enough, that means you can spare the enemy. Since the very start of the fight, he had no intention of wanting to kill you, and you could have spared him at any point, but the only reason you can't is because he breaks the mercy button. That is an amazing way to write a character without saying anything explicitly. I love writing like that in characters in games. It's possibly one of my favorite boss fights of all time. It's challenging, it's fun, and it's incredibly emotional, making you fight a character that has such a good first impression to you and that you've heard all these amazing things about. And the song is just perfect for it. I really like the song for what it just contributes to the emotions of the moment, and even more so, the fact that Toriel's theme is slightly intermixed with his theme is perfectly fitting for him being her ex-husband and him still having feelings for her. Overall, the song is just perfect. The fight accompanies it so well, and it's emotional enough to make the song have a slightly sad, almost a sad connotation when thinking of the fight. And then with that, we're going to go into an equally great song with complete different meaning, Battle Against a True Hero. After finishing your first playthrough in Undertale, you'll most likely be aware that you can do a pacifist or a genocide run. And most likely you're going to pick pacifist because you've gotten to like some of the characters, like maybe you like Papyrus, or maybe Sans was a real hit for you, and him knowing everything about the saves as well was enough to make you interested in what would happen if you spared everyone. And throughout your entire pacifist run, it's made to absolutely have you fall in love with every character you've seen and grow so attached. So when you possibly come back later to do a genocide run, it's so much more painful having to kill every single character you love. So when you run into Undyne in the genocide run and instantly one-shot her, something feels off, something's wrong. She doesn't instantly turn to dust, she instead refuses to die and rejects death, using all of her last power in her soul to come back with determination, to rival the main character's strength, coming back with immense power and becoming was definitely the first and hardest hurdle to overcome in the genocide run. Playing Undertale, you'll know how major it is for a monster to have a soul and especially determination. Monsters have souls, but they're not as strong as the humans. And the big thing is that a monster soul should not be able to have the ability of like saving or resurrection like that, like the main characters does. And even more important is the fact that she has such immense determination. Determination was tested by characters like Alphys in Undertale because monsters don't really have it like humans do. So when Undyne refuses to die and has the determination to just not die, you know something special is happening. And so you realize that this is going to be a hard fight. Even though you've been one-shotting like every enemy up to that point, you know that this is going to be the hardest fight up to that point. The song is just perfect for this situation. It's bursting with the seams of courage, with the belief that Undyne is just the last barrier between you and the eradication of all monsters. That as the Royal Guard captain, she needs to do all she can to defend the monsters and all that they have to live for. It's an amazing song with just genuine feelings behind the song that really shows the emotions of Undyne, making it known that she thinks she is the last barrier between you and the eradication of all monsters, making it easily one of my top 5 favorite video game songs of all time. Growing up as a 2005 baby, I came into existing around the time an amazing group of games had just come out in just the years prior or were about to. And to me, those games that I can think of was Super Mario Galaxy, Halo Reach, and Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. Twilight Princess is a huge game to me. It was my first ever Zelda game while also being one of my first ever games in general. So this was my first introduction to games as a kid. And it has single-handedly made me a huge Legend of Zelda fan, where for years all I could talk about was Link and all of his games, and which was my favorite, which unsurprisingly was Twilight Princess. And one huge thing that made me love Twilight Princess so much was the character Midna and her cocky and sarcastic personality that throughout the game develops into a character who cares for all life, whereas before she only cared for the Twilight in her own race and did not care for the Hylians. It's one of my favorite representations of character development in a game, show, movie, anything. And they don't do anything to suddenly be like, I was mean, but now you can see all these horrible things happen to me, so now it's valid that I'm this mean and rude. It's nothing like that. The huge turning point for her is when the main antagonist in the game, Zant, grabs her and forces her to stay in the presence of the Beast of Light, effectively burning her to near death, unable to move and barely talk, while also forcing Link into his permanent wolf form. So when Link wakes up with Midna on his back, completely photonegative and dying, as this song plays in the background, it just makes you do so much without actually telling you to do anything. In fact, it doesn't even tell you to go help Midna if you don't want to. But because Midna had become such a lovable character and had grown so much through the game at that point, every player couldn't help but try to save her, thinking that they had to the point that I know some people that actually thought it was a timed quest because it was so stressful. And the whole time that you're running to Hyrule Castle to pray that Zelda can save Midna, this beautiful and remorseful, sorrowful song is just playing in the background, seemingly pushing you forward. It's a beautiful song, and it's perfect for everything that's happening. That whole moment of the game would feel like nothing if it weren't for this simple but effective song, just pushing you forward. It's such a beautiful and emotional moment in the game. It's probably one of my favorite ways a game is ever played with the player's head. It's such a good fact, it's such a good thing that they don't even make you do anything. They don't tell you anything to do. You just, as the player, expect that Zelda can help, and you run straight to Hyrule Castle. It's a beautiful moment in a game, and possibly one of my favorite moments where it feels like the game is about to end, where it feels like things are going horribly wrong. And that's why I think that deserves to be in the top 5 favorite video game songs for me. If there's one game series that's most known for its difficulty and its amazing soundtracks, it's definitely the Dark Souls series. The masterful orchestras playing the music for the bosses, really making you know exactly how terrifying a boss is and how threatening they are, with choirs joining in as well to really make you feel feared whatever beast you're fighting is hulking over your small and fragile character. But it's never enough to discourage the player. Sure, it's tough to keep going and dying, go, dying, go, dying, go. But at some point, the player is going to make it over this hurdle. But we're not here to talk about this, like these songs with the most beautiful and soul-piercing orchestras. We're not here to talk about the beautiful choir that sings in the background of songs, making your face run cold. We're here to talk about one song that defies the rest, being nothing but one instrument that manages to carry more emotion than I've ever felt in a game before. I'm talking about Gwyn, Lord of Cinder. This boss is an amazing subversion of expectations. The whole game building up to meeting him, making sure that all these characters and NPCs you're talking to, make sure that you know his terrifying presence and all the things he's done, how much power he has and all the control he wields over the kiln. Yet, when you meet him, you expect a large deity-like warrior, but all you see is nothing but a frail old man fighting for a legacy that's long gone. And what's better than accompanying a sad old man who you're giving his final moments to, than a singular instrument to accompany him to his final deathbed? The piano. The melancholic sounds of the piano seemingly bounce off the player's souls, just resonating sadness and a want for freedom, yet also the need to not stop fighting. It's a perfect instrument for the Lord of Sunlight, who has fallen trying to keep the Age of Fire going. That piano is there to witness the player wrestle to control the kiln from the Lord and give him his final rest. It is a beautiful instrument, the piano. It is my favorite instrument of all time. I absolutely love the piano because it has so much emotion you can put into every single note. And they did Gwyn so well with this. There's no choir. There's no like opera. There's no huge orchestra. It's just a piano. It's a sad, beautiful piano, making sure that you know these are his final moments. It is a beautiful fight. It's an amazing fight, incredibly sad in some kind of way, making you feel terrible for killing this old man who's now just trying to cling to this legacy that died. It's a beautiful fight with a beautiful instrument that just carries the whole fight. And that's why I think that Gwyn, Lord of Cinder is the third best song for me in gaming.
Oh, you must be Professor Layton, I presume.
I know that I'm going to get a huge amount of backlash for this choice. I know that there's plenty of games that have a lot more meaningful and a lot better songs for their games, but I'm just going to remind you that this is my personal choice and preference. When I was growing up, I was incredibly lucky to get a DS, and I played the crap out of it. I'd play Pokemon Heart Gold, Pokemon Platinum, Touchmaster 2, and my personal favorite, Professor Layton. I will never ever forget the first time I loaded up Professor Layton on my DS, and that sweet theme of my favorite top hat wearing man would begin to play. I'd never been a huge fan of puzzle games, and I'm still not, because I'd never been smart enough to solve most of them without a guide. But Professor Layton has a few moments where he forces you to solve a puzzle and riddle. And my favorite part is that the game just oozes charisma and fun mysteries that were genuinely hard to figure out. Professor Layton's theme is always stuck in my head when I think of some of my favorite games. And it's made even better when all the future Professor Layton games have reused the theme with little changes. In fact, we even got a live version of it, which is the one I'm specifically going to use. I just think that this song is perfect for who Layton is and what the game is, and it's a huge part of the game franchise where every fan of the game will love and know this song by heart. I know it's an incredibly base take, because the game doesn't really have a bunch of extreme moments like that, but it was important to me growing up. I mean, it had cutscenes on DS. Which DS game had cutscenes that were fully animated, stuff like that, you know? It's an incredibly meaningful song to me, and I've always been a huge fan of the games, and I'm excited for the fact that it's now coming back with the new Switch game soon.
It's beautiful. That thing.
I'm a big fan of the roguelike genre, if it wasn't obvious, but Hades is definitely one of them that takes the top 5, at least for me. I know it's basic, but you can't blame me when the characters are amazing, the voice acting is the best I've ever seen for a game, and the soundtrack is some weird amalgamation of a billion different instruments that shouldn't work together. But damn, did Murine Corps do an amazing job with the soundtrack. Being completely unbiased, I think I can confidently say that this song is the best song in all of video games. It perfectly matches the moment when it begins to play, and I'll explain it to you for you that don't know what the actual game is. You're playing as a character named Zagreus. He is a Greek god of pretty much rebirth and blood. He dies, comes back again, over and over. That's how they got the excuse of the roguelike. And at birth, he thought his mother was another god named Nyx, and his dad, Hades, lied to him, said that it was always Nyx. So when Zagreus started to try to escape Hades and make his way out of hell, he eventually found out, once he made it to the surface, that there was a garden there. That his real mother was in that garden. Just imagine this. Zagreus finally making it to the surface for the first time. The snow seemingly burning his feet from how cold it is. As he walks into this garden that's green everywhere, and everything is just glowing. And finally reuniting with his true mother, who he thought was dead or didn't exist anymore. It's such a beautiful moment as this just lovely duo, this son and mother, finally coming back together after all these years, thinking that the other was dead or didn't exist, and just finally having a loving embrace. It's a beautiful moment. It's at the peak of story, in my opinion, too. It's an amazing take on Greek mythology, which is one of my favorite things to ever research or read about. It's just the voice acting as well for Zagreus and Persephone. It just pushes the music and emotions so far. It is just one of the most perfect endings to a game, if you can view that as just the basic ending for the game without going for the true ending. It has beautiful graphics, alongside accompanying one of the best stories I've seen for a game. It's so emotional, and it means a huge amount to the characters in the story that you started to really learn to love and like. It's just, to me, the epitome of what makes a song perfect. Alright, and right before I wrap up the video, I just want to make sure that since this is my first ever video and I'm starting to like learn and like know how to do this stuff, if you guys have any pointers or things you'd like to point out that I can maybe work on or do better or something that I can change around, I will very gladly listen to some constructive criticism in the comments. Thank you so much, guys. Alright, and that's it for the video. Thank you everyone for watching the video, if you've watched all the way to the end or just skipped through to check which songs got certain placements. I really appreciate the view and your time in watching this, and if you want to feel free to like and subscribe, you can. My content in the future is going to be a little bit all over the place, but I'm going to try to focus on things like video essays about certain topics in games and shows, and also especially the processes of getting 100% completions on games, since I'm a completionist. And then afterwards, as like a cool thing to make it more unique, I'm gonna get it tattooed on a sleeve on my right arm. In fact, I've actually had a sneak peek of gameplay for the next video I'm working on in both the intro and the outro. I'm gonna be 100% completing Celeste. Again, thank you for watching, and I hope you guys all have a great day or night, or whatever time it is for you.